So round 4, 2023 U.S. Open, Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm playing National Master Steven Szpisjak, who I believe is from the Chicago area. And yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect going into the game, right? So I played d4, he goes e6. I think I saw him playing a lot of like Nimzo, Bogo Indian type of opening. So I think I was maybe expecting knight f6 and then e6. So it's interesting he started with e6, allowing me to transpose to a French if I'd wanted. But a lot of times the point of this one, because after knight f3, knight f6, we just get the same opening anyway. A lot of times the point of this one is to avoid the Trompowsky, because here white can't go bishop g5. So I was wondering maybe this is this was the idea behind the move order, because I have been playing some Trompowsky recently, and that would be kind of cool, because it means, you know, it's like my opponents now have to kind of think about multiple lines that I could play, which is good to know. So I went knight f3, knight f6, c4. He goes d5, knight c3, and dc4. So Vienna. Honestly, I wasn't expecting this one, but I wasn't too concerned. I play e4, which is one of the big main lines these days, and he goes bishop b4. There's also this move b5 that I've faced a couple times, but bishop b4 is kind of like the classic main line. And I went for the kind of trendy line here where white sacrifices this e-pawn. Black kind of has to take it, otherwise white is just going to have a very good center for free, basically. So black takes, white castles, offering the second pawn. It's definitely way too dangerous for black to take. So he goes bishop e7. So all this is pretty well-established theory. I played knight e5, knight c6, queen g4, castles. Basically, white sacrificed the pawn, but you get this kind of long-term pressure. So the idea is now white kind of develops the pieces. Bishop often comes to f4. This rook can come to d1. And then white starts lifting the rooks, like rook d3, rook over, or this rook can also lift. The bishop can drop back via d3. And yeah, essentially white gets some really nice attacking chances here. It's almost like an isolated queen pawn position, except the d4 pawn is defended and we're down a pawn. So rather than having to like defend a weak d pawn, white's just down a pawn. So if the attack doesn't work out, then it's going to be pretty dangerous for white, of course. But white's pieces do enjoy kind of a lot of activity. And in general, from what I understand, if black takes on e5, it could have taken earlier as well. Here white would take with the pawn and then kind of play for the space advantage, like bishop f4, rook comes in, and then again white plays for the attack, bishop d3. Again, the rook can lift, d3 to g3, and yeah, it's very, very dangerous for black's king. It's like the board is divided in two. It's like black is an extra pawn on the queen side, which is very nice for them in the long run, but of course white kind of has this nice superiority on the king side. So f5, and this is, I believe, the main move. It feels very weakening, but I think, you know, they've discovered via games that like bishop f6 is just not quite cutting it. White just kind of builds up. Bishop f4, rooks come in. So black has to do something a little bit more drastic. I play queen f3, knight takes e5, rook takes e5. And yeah, so here the main move is king h8, getting out of the pin. And if white wants to, they can take the pawn back on e6, but generally I think white doesn't get much of an advantage in this position, like queen d7, and the rooks get developed, and yeah, white doesn't have anything special here. So white's idea is to try to kind of keep building up and win the pawn back under better circumstances. So as far as I can remember, the theory was to play bishop f4. Black often goes bishop d6, and then white can choose between like rook e3, rook e2. These moves have kind of their nuances, but what black often does at the highest level is they take and they go queen d6, and they basically give the pawn back, but they kind of try to make a draw in this rook endgame, where I think white's like a little bit better. Ding Liren won this kind of nice game against Le Quang Liam last year in a rook endgame like this, but it's very technical. Honestly, I don't think my chances of winning such a position would be very high. So yeah, this line is pretty solid. And during the game, I was like, ooh, I don't know, like how am I gonna, try to convert this one? But then my opponent ends up going bishop d6 here right away, not king h8. And I already knew why this is not a great idea, but yeah, it took a few minutes just to kind of orient myself with the position. But long story short, black just hangs the pawn. Rook takes f5 can be played. And yeah, my opponent spent some time here, so because the thing is, like, there have been some games with this, so this is like still theory, but I don't think he actually, just based on his body language, I don't think he meant to give up the pawn, because up until this point he had definitely been following all the main theory. But yeah, but here white wins the pawn back and black is left with this e6 pawn, so black hasn't really fixed their strategic problems. So this is now just a very good version for white. I have like all the pressure and then equal material. So I'm just kind of playing for two results. So queen f6. He offers the endgame. I think white would be better in the endgame, but I think, I don't want to improve black structure. And also I think with queens on the board, white can definitely have more play in the position. Like I have this bishop d3 idea, just very obvious, just trying to provoke some weaknesses. And clearly the queen is very nice here. As it kind of looks at both sides of the board. So here black played c6. He has to kind of defend this pawn before he develops the bishop. And c6 makes sense. If rook b8, I was thinking, for example, like bishop d2, bishop d7, rook e1. And then black has a problem with the e pawn, but the rook can't move because then I can just snag on b7 and black can't really punish me for just taking this pawn. They're kind of too passive. So I think this is why c6 was played. And I played bishop d2. I was analyzing this one a little bit yesterday, and maybe a better approach would have been to just start with bishop d3. The reason why I didn't do this one is I didn't see like what I'm actually achieving here after h6. Like I can give a check, but I don't really have a ton of pieces in the attack. But something like this might have been a better way to play, and then I can follow with like rook b1, bishop can go to b2 or e3, and yeah, white would have a very comfortable position. I would say pretty big advantage here. I went for a more, straightforward approach. Bishop d2, just trying to get the rook to e1 as quickly as possible. Black played rook e8, and now my first thought here was to go rook e3, which I thought would be pretty annoying, just like rook f3, and then where does the queen go, right? And now I'm setting up a pretty serious attack with just like rook f3, bishop d3, and then black's king starts to face some serious issues. If g6, I'm always going to throw in h4 and h5 here. But then I realized queen f4 could be the response, and then I didn't see such a good move. I thought about just going for the endgame, like g3, something like this, but I felt like I should really try first with the queens on the board, play for the attack, and then I can always maybe go for the endgame later. So I think this would be better for white, but I was kind of playing for more. So I start with g3. Now my idea is I just want rook e3, rook f3 without getting bothered by the queen. Bishop can come back to d3. I can also build up like king g2, h4. Here he goes g6, which surprised me. But at the same time, I think at some point, black is going to have to play one of these moves, either g6 or h6. They both have their drawbacks, so it's honestly hard to say which one is better or worse. Like this one gives a hook, I immediately played h4. But then if h6, I still have a hook on the g5 square, in the long run. I can play like f4, h4, just g4, g5 eventually. But also like it gives up this infiltration, whenever white wants, which is kind of hard to deal with, especially with rook e3, rook f3 and all this stuff, right? So yeah, it's hard to suggest stuff for black at this point. But g6, I went h4, queen f5. And here I thought for a while, because I really didn't want to allow the endgame, but I wasn't sure exactly where to put my queen. Because queen e2 I think is very natural. But eventually I decided on queen e3, because because I thought this plan is actually kind of annoying. Bishop d3 and then h5, depending on where black plays. So just as a sample line that I didn't think was going to happen. King h8, for example, was played in the game. I went bishop d3. If black played queen a5, very cooperative line, then I would be, very willing to offer him the a-pawn and then get something like this. So this would be like white's dream, where I'm playing h5, kingside is just getting torn apart, and then my queen is ready to come in, and this is why I put the queen on e3, because I wanted the queen to be able to jump into h6. Of course, here there's also ideas like bishop c3 and d5, so a lot of stuff going in white's favor. So yeah, that was kind of the reasoning behind queen e3, just to get access to this h6 square. Black plays queen f8, which makes sense. And yeah, up until this point, I felt like, I really did everything right. My first thought was c4, which looked very reasonable, trying to get the bishop to c3 against black's king, and then looking for some kind of d5 break, which felt very dangerous. What I didn't like at first was c5. I thought this was kind of annoying. Because if I take, bishop takes, I thought like queen e5 check, king g8, f2 is hanging, so I have to spend the tempo defending this one. I still think white has like a really nice position here, but I was wondering, if I could maybe get more. But optically, this still looks great for white after any move, like rook e2, bishop e3, bishop f4. Here I still think white has a big advantage. But I saw like bishop c3, queen takes f2 check, king h1, bishop c6 check, and I got a little scared, like, oh, what's happening there? So this one, like, I wasn't totally sure about during the game, but I think is totally good enough. I can also play bishop c3 in this position, which is even stronger, because on takes, I think just queen takes is fine, bishop takes is probably fine as well, and black's king is very weak. And now here we have h5 coming as well. But yeah, somehow I talked myself out of that one, and I decided to start with h5 here. And yeah, this was very much a case of where like I thought about c4 for a long time, ultimately like wasn't super clear on it, and decided to start with this one without fully like evaluating the consequences of h5, just based on not wanting to play c4, wanting to play something else. So I started with this move. And here black basically has to take, because otherwise white's just taking and coming in with queen h6. So black has no choice. And I had a couple of ideas here, but then I ended up changing my mind on all of them. So like queen g5 was the first thought, but then queen f7, black can go rook g8. I didn't see exactly what I'm doing here. And then my second idea was to go queen e4, hitting this one. But then I realized after queen f5, like originally I had this in mind, going for this endgame, where I thought white is better because black has these double pawns. I have a passed pawn. I don't have any material advantage. We have 5 pawns each, but I feel like white's pawns are a lot healthier. But then the more I looked at this endgame, the more I like wasn't sure if it's actually winnable or what my winning chances are here. Because it actually just looked kind of unclear. Like I have this a pawn that's weak. Black can target this one. Black has bishop g6 somewhere. It wasn't super obvious to me that white is actually going to be having winning chances. So then after h5 gh5, I'm like, wait, what am I supposed to do? Get this pawn back. Eventually, I decided to go c4, kind of jumping back to my idea from earlier, wanting to go bishop c3 next. But now after queen g7, all of a sudden things got very tricky because black puts the queen here. After bishop c3, my bishop's hanging, so I'm not really threatening to do anything. And black now wants to play h4 and take on g3. And yeah, I'm left wondering why I gave up my h-pawn. So I found some way to keep some pressure here. I played king g2, h4, rook h1. Now the idea is that I'm hitting h7, so it's hard for black to actually take on g3. But here black finds very nice move bishop e7, which I totally missed, where he just defends the pawn and actually makes it very hard for white to advance. Also, he wants to put the bishop on f6 to target d4 and then break with e5 eventually and just open up the rook. So here it just gets very double-edged, I would say. And yeah, at this point I started just like burning a lot of time because I realized things are very, very complicated. The move I really wanted to make was queen e4. Because here I can think about, of course, bothering black's queen that's tied down to h7. I can think about rook takes h4, like some exchange sacrifices at some point. And a g4 as well could be an idea. So definitely wanted to put the queen on e4, but the main thing that concerned me was c5, followed by bishop c6. And any kind of like d5 here, takes, black goes like bishop f6, for example. The rook opens up. This just looked super, super dangerous. So I didn't want to get into something like this. Also, black is like h3 check at some point. So this didn't look good at all. And yeah, so actually I haven't been checking my games with the engine too much. But this one, like, I couldn't help but look. The engine found a good move here, which I did not consider during the game. I'll just show you guys this one line. But yeah, Stockfish wants rook b1 in this position and gives white an advantage. With the idea of bishop c6, d5, takes, bishop f6. This is the thing I'd be afraid of during the game. dc. Rook takes e4, c takes b7. And that's why the rook had to go to b1. Because now white is promoting the queen. Black can give the bishop for the queen or the rook, but then white takes on b8 and black has back rank issues. So white is just, I think, totally winning here. So, yeah, funny combination. I think rook b1 is kind of beyond my capabilities. Maybe I would play this move in a random game, but playing this with the idea of like d5 and then ndc, yeah, a little bit too strong for me. But yeah, at least I had the intuition that like queen e4 was the right move, but yeah, I simply just couldn't make it work. So I ended up going queen e2, which I felt like was kind of a tricky move, offering black the d4 pawn. If black takes on d4, I thought this was very dangerous. I can try either bishop f4 here, playing for bishop e5 check, or bishop b2. This one looked even more problematic with the idea of like bishop f6, rook takes h4, for example, and then I'm hitting h7, I'm hitting the queen. After takes, there's bishop b2, and white is winning the queen, and not enough material for black. So, of course, I was very much wanting to give that pawn, but my opponent plays bishop f6, which is a lot stronger. And yeah, now it's really not so easy what white should do here. I ended up going queen h5, trying to play actively, put some pressure here, maybe look for bishop h6. And yeah, things got very sharp at this point. So e5, I went for another kind of deep think here. But yeah, my first thought was actually just like bishop h6, which I think was probably the simplest thing to do. But I didn't really want to allow h3. But for example, h3, king h2, queen e7. This, yes, looked super messy to me during the game. I think the engine wanted rook e1 in this position, which, yeah, again was like, this one I think I could have found. Now the rook is not really doing a whole lot on the h-file. But yeah, definitely should have went for this one, considering how the game went. Because here I think, it's very, very difficult for black with the pin on the e-file. The king is actually now very safe on h2. So I really just like misevaluated this position. Like I thought it's very unclear during the game, but compared to what I did, no, this actually looks very, very nice for white. So I decided to sack the exchange. I went rook takes h4. And yeah, the idea here is to, of course, try to attack on the dark squares. So takes, queen takes. And now my hope was to get bishop h6 or bishop g5, followed by bishop f6. But a lot of this was based on a miscalculation. So black ends up taking on d4. He could have also pushed e4, actually. I thought this was interesting too. Because if I take this one, then he has queen e7. And he hits the queen and he hits the bishop with check. And so I'm not in time to, you know, if I just had like an extra move, go bishop f4, bishop e5, bishop g5, you know, everything would be great. But there's just no time. Or even if I could play like bishop d3 and queen h5, just like keep the queens on the board, then white's position would be very, very fun. But yeah, here I'm forced to trade queens. And then I think only black can really be better in the endgame. So after e4, I'd have to do something like bishop e2 maybe. But this is super, super unclear, you know, looking for like bishop g5 and bishop f6 stuff. But yeah, this would be quite messy. Instead, he played e takes d4, which is also actually quite good because my original bishop h6 can get just met with queen g4, I realized. And then queen f6 check, king g8. I actually don't have anything great here, and black is now threatening queen h3 followed by rook e1, which is just mating. So this doesn't work out for white. I'd have to like trade queens or something, and then that, you know, I'd just be losing. So I realized I have to play something else here. I ended up going bishop g5, which I think is a good try. Of course, threatening this one. And surprisingly, it's not so easy for black to deal with this threat. If rook f8, then bishop h6 now wins back the material and you know, even more. So he goes rook e6. But now this allows bishop f5. So I felt like the two bishops should always give white kind of enough compensation here. And yeah, all of a sudden it's not so easy for black, because if rook d6, for example, then it's considering c5, hitting the rook. If he takes here, I take here. And then we have a very, very strange endgame with opposite colored bishops, but black's king is, of course, very weak. We both have d-pawns. I wasn't sure how to evaluate this one, but I definitely felt like I have some initiative because my king is safer. Also on rook d6, yeah, maybe there's other options as well, like bishop f4 possibly. But he found a very nice move here, king g8, which ends up solving a lot of black's problems, because now I pretty much have to take the exchange back. I don't really have a way to build up the pressure. And after takes, we get a similar endgame, but here the king is a little bit safer, and I'm not sure if there's a way for white to pose any real problems. Because bishop f6, queen g4, and black is basically fine here. I can trade queens and take this one, but b6, and it's opposite colored bishops with equal pawns, so black is totally okay. So I ended up trying bishop h6, which I thought was a decent try, because here there are definitely ways for black to go wrong. Like if queen g6, then okay, queen d8 check is mate in 2. And if queen g4, there's queen f6. And black can't actually stop all the mates. There's no way to stop both this and this one, right? Because there's queen f5, then queen g7. And yeah, if queen f7, then like queen d8 check immediately. If queen d7, I was thinking just queen f6 here. Looks pretty strong, because now we're threatening this, and then if queen f7, then queen d8 again. But my opponent finds queen e5, which actually ends up saving, because here, unfortunately, white doesn't have queen e7. Queen e7 looks like just a winning move, totally mating, or leading to the other variations, but unfortunately on queen e7, black has bishop h3 check. And black would be winning the queen, right, and winning the game. So, yeah, queen e5 is definitely very, very clutch find here. And, yeah, I spent a lot of my time, but I simply couldn't figure out how to keep playing for a win or posing problems. So yeah, I realized probably time to make a drop, because now we're a pawn down. Black is starting to take on c4. Black is a d pawn, and once black takes on c4, they're very close to just creating a lot of counterplay, like bishop d5 check, queen e4, and then playing for mate. So I realized white has to be very careful here now not to fall worse. So I played bishop f4, and the idea here after check is to set up the queen to come in. Unfortunately, there was nothing better. You know, I was definitely looking at check, for example, and check, but after king g6, the king just has too many squares and is not getting mated. Black always has queen e4 check as well to cover some stuff. So yeah, there wasn't a lot happening here, and here I was worried that I'm just gonna let the king out. So yeah, I decided to go for the perpetual. So bishop f4, check, king h2 takes. I gave this check, I gave this check, and yeah, I don't think black really has a great way to play on here. The queen has to kind of cover the d pawn. If white takes on d4, then white's going to be totally fine as well. So yeah, essentially I think we were both just kind of okay with the draw at this point. So game went king f7 here. I went back, and yeah, we just repeated like this, and draw was agreed. So interesting game. I definitely felt like, you know, I kind of blew it because I had a very, very nice advantage. Key moment definitely, I think, when I played h5, I just kind of rushed with this move, and yeah, I end up going h5 takes c4, where I should have just done the exact opposite order, like c4, let black deal with this one first, and then play for h5 from there. So yeah, that was kind of unfortunate. I definitely should have just kept building up and taken my time with this position. Even if I just play something like super rigid, like f4, and then just like very, very slowly advance, but make sure that black doesn't get any e5 pawn break. Even this, I think, would have been a better approach. But yeah, you know, it happens. It's just gonna have to be a middle game lesson to learn from. And anyways, it doesn't spoil too much. We're still on 3.5 out of 4 in the tournament. 5 rounds to go. And yeah, enjoying the chess. I'm enjoying this one game a day experience where you get to hang out, review your games, you know, prep a little bit, and then just play one round, and then tournament continues the next day. So it's been pretty cool so far, and yeah, gonna try to do my best for the last couple rounds.